I'm cursing. There are so many benefits. You got to talk fast.
T-Mobile Home Internet ranks #1 in customer satisfaction for home wireless internet by J.D. Power.
Wow, you are good.
Try singing it. T-Mobile has price lock.
They won't raise your rate on internet.
Hulu and Paramount Plus on them.
Get T-Mobile Home Internet all in for just $55 a month with auto pay and any postpaid voice line.
Additional terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Shopping with your parents can be embarrassing.
Why would they sell jeans with holes in them? I'm going to speak to the manager.
Mom!
That hoodie is giving. You should get it. YOLO.
Thanks to the Chase mobile app, your kid can shop independently while you keep an eye on their spending. So you can go from...
We can be twinsies.
...to...
How was shopping? Saw you stayed on budget.
Thanks, Mom.
Freedom for kids, control for parents. That's family banking from Chase.
Account subject to approval. Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank N.A. member FDIC.
This is Dr. Riyadh from DPR Dentistry. More men than ever are worried about their smile and their appearance. With Invisalign, your teeth will look amazing and stay healthier.
Hey, Buffalo. It's Doug Worthington, former pro football player and proud Buffalo native. To get the smile I've always wanted, I took the trip from Columbus, Ohio to DPR Dentistry for Invisalign. And let me tell you, it's a game changer. Dr. Riyadh and her squad at DPR Dentistry, they're like the MVPs of dental care. High-tech and top-notch. If you want a smile that turns heads, call DPR Dentistry and score yourself a dynamic smile. That's DPR Dentistry, where smiles are made legendary.
The Buffalo Sabres wrapped up a back-to-back over the weekend, going 1-1 following their win over Winnipeg yesterday. They'll be back at it tomorrow when they host Ottawa, and with that, it is the return of former forward Dylan Cousins, who was traded to the Senators at this year's deadline. In his 8 games with the Senators so far, Cousins has 3 goals and 7 points, and when speaking with the Ottawa media today, he offered some of his thoughts on returning to Buffalo.
I'm excited. It's going to be a little weird for sure, but, going to try not to overthink it. It's, at the end of the day, just another game and, a big 2 points that we need.
Light night overall in the NHL. Just 4 games this evening. 2 at 7:30. The Devils host Vancouver, and the Islanders have the Blue Jackets in town. At 8, the Wild are in Dallas to take on the Stars, and then at 9, Detroit is out west to take on Utah. Over in college basketball, the men's tournament is through the first 2 rounds. All 4 1 seeds are still alive, and just 1 double-digit seed has advanced to the second weekend. John Calipari's 10-seeded Arkansas. The Sweet 16 is going to get underway on Thursday. While the women's bracket, they're finishing up the round of 32 today. And in the women's NIT, UB came back against UMass, and now they're going to take on Southern Indiana on Thursday. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Mike.
I gotta wonder what kind of working relationship he'd have with Satan.
It's Mike Schopp.
I've often wondered that. Like, he, they, I don't know what his pronouns are, or their pronoun. Anyway, Satan.
And the Bulldog.
What's the upside of doing well? Well, maybe they're too busy making everyone else's life hell.
Oh, boy.
And
wow.
You might just be able to do your own thing if you're partnered with Satan.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
They're too busy, making Scott Norwood miss field goals.
Oh, come on.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Poor Scott Norwood. The strays just keep coming. Here's Bulldog. Doesn't even really mean anything by that, I'm pretty sure. 35 years later. Poor Scott Norwood. He made a few. Missed that one. That hurt. Hi, I'm Mike Schopp. Thanks for being with me. Bulldog is off this week. I'll be sure to say a lot of things about him, things that I won't say in front of him. But I'm going to make you wait a little bit for that. We will talk to Sal today and also Tyler Dunn. It is 1 month from the draft. I'll consider that, an occasion. Don't need a reason, but I'll make it one to talk about the draft today. I know the show prior to mine, lots of people were calling in about the draft. Maybe, I always say this, but you get to a point, maybe it's now, maybe it was last week, maybe it was 2 months ago, maybe it'll be the day of, maybe it'll never happen, where you have an outcome in the draft that you want. I am having a tough time with that this year because while I think most people are saying the same things about the Bills and their needs, like, there's pretty much a consensus on that. When it was wide receiver mania in here, this giant board beside me that the morning guys made and stuck, the names up, trying to figure out our favorites, we were all about that last year. It ended up at Keon Coleman, but, Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, these other candidates for the Bills at receiver as post-Diggs trade. And then Davis leaves, it kind of felt, okay, they're going to have to do this now. A lot of us wanted it for a couple of years, didn't happen. They drafted Kincaid as kind of like a compromise with the wide receiver train enthusiasts. And then last year, they kind of gutted it. So it was time for, a blue chip prospect, which, is in theory what they got in Coleman. He was the 33rd pick of the draft. He was the 8th receiver taken last year. So not exactly, the most blue chip, if you will. But when we had these receiver debates, it was lively because it was not unanimous that the Bills, A, should draft a receiver early, or B, would. You never know what they're going to do, and the draft has to sort of get going before things become clearer. Boards can dry up, whatever. So you won't know before the draft, whatever. It was not unanimous that they should do it. And I say that thinking about how last year, this is a point we've talked about a lot, they really thrived when they shifted, this is 2023 now, from Ken Dorsey to Joe Brady, and became more built around the run. And it worked for them, so will they draft a receiver? Should they draft a receiver? All of that, sort of in the framework where they didn't really get a lot from Diggs or Davis, hardly anything from Davis after that coordinator change, and Diggs, his production tailed off, but they still won every week until the playoff loss to Kansas City. So will they do it? This year, the consensus is really, decided. Like, it's defense. And it makes perfect sense. They have been drafting offense up top the last couple of years. Their defense really fell off. Their pass defense really fell off, and it hurt them badly. That's what's maybe a little bit ironic about the Kansas City loss in the playoffs is, like, it's one thing, and they've lost to them 4 times now in the postseason the last 5 years. But it's one thing to sort of think about Mahomes and Kelsey and Andy Reid, and a loss to the Chiefs, an inability to stop the Chiefs can always make sense. But it was a year where Kansas City's offense just did not really perform. And yet against the Bills in the playoffs, they did. So defense is kind of obvious for the Bills. They don't have a starting corner, it seems, right now. Interior defensive line, and really any kind of playmaker position. Plus, it sounds like a draft where that's really for when the Bills pick 30 and then twice late in round 2. That's really where the talent is, there on defense. So it's both. These are your needs. This is what's available in the draft. And, the last couple of years drafting pass catchers, all the more reason to think that's where we end up here. The challenge I'm having in talking about this every day is I don't think I care who or what it is. And, that can be me just being lazy, but I'm being real too. Like, different traits, different sizes. Bulldog likes the bigger defensive tackle versus the smaller one. Corner can be, what is their arm length, all these kind of different physical traits or even intangibles that you can make it about. But I don't really have that much of a preference because I think, this is my excuse anyway, because I think it's kind of all the same for what it means to their chances. You need a couple of starters, at least one, and they'll end up with one somehow, either in the draft or, another way. They'll get there. And then, they'll roll the ball out in week 1, and Josh Allen presumably will be the quarterback, and their offense will probably, because of that, be really good. And, defensively, last year they were down. They won 13 games and another 2 playoff games. It's like, how much, we'll see what happens. But as you try to project it, how much of a difference does a first-round pick 30 at defensive tackle make versus pick 30 at corner versus pick 30 at edge? I don't know. Like, to me, it's not enough to get super locked in on a certain player or even a certain position when it comes to defense. So that's me. I mean, receiver is always exciting to think about, but having drafted Coleman and even signing Joshua Palmer after having drafted Kincaid, I just doubt they would start this draft that way. Plus it being a year where not that many people, relatively speaking, are that excited about the receiver options. I mentioned I have Tyler Dunn later. So golongtd.com is his site. And he's got, from Bob McGinn, longtime NFL writer who covered the Packers, who's part of Tyler's team at GoLongTD. He's got a long breakdown and ranking of the top receivers. I've never been more spooked by the idea of, a first-round pick for one of these guys than today, having read that. It's anonymous scouts, but the guy's got, McGinn has been around a long time, and, by extension, Tyler, not questioning him at all. But if you've got anonymous scouts who are going to say, things that you wouldn't want to put your name on, like Luther Burden. So I do these PFF, I haven't done one in a few days actually, but I've done a few of these PFF mock drafts. And a couple times it came to be the Bills pick at pick 30, and you've got kind of the usual names on defense. But then there's Luther Burden, who is wide receiver. Should we count Travis Hunter? Let's count Travis Hunter. Like 3 or 4. It's Hunter, who also plays corner, of course, and then it's Tet McMillan almost always next. And after that, you have 3 or 4 different names depending on your cup of tea. So Burden a couple of times came up for me in these mock drafts. I want the A. I want a receiver too, but I want the grade for posterity. I want to make a pick that PFF is going to like, which shouldn't be that hard given that they're ranking the players and telling you their favorites. It really shouldn't be that hard. So Luther Burden, okay. I mean, he's up there. I know the name from these receivers and the combine and everything else. But then I read the thing at Tyler's website. The mom is a problem. It's written. The girlfriend is his manager. The mom is a problem. He's a good player, whatever that means. He's a good player on Saturday. He's very ordinary Monday through Friday. I mean, there are these kind of comments about a lot of these guys. Even McMillan, who is outside of Hunter, and I just say it that way because he also plays corner, but like everybody's wide receiver 1, pretty much. Really immature, poster child for this NIL. Just like there was one line. The stuff on film this year, that's just gross. Like this is the best receiver in the draft. Different than recent years, eh? So I kind of like the idea because I always do, and I think the Bills could really benefit. But today I got a little scared because the class is just not as hot. Apparently, the mom is a problem. Now you're telling me something here. So, I mean, that's just one article, but I think it's unlikely that the Bills do this anyway, and it leaves me just kind of like, I don't know, bored for what the draft can be. I mean, really, what could happen? I mean, teams make trades. The Bills have done plenty of that in the draft over the years, little ones to move up for, Kyer Elam and Dalton Kincaid, bigger ones to get to Allen, and then Tremaine Edmonds, there's been lots of action from the Bills, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, I love that. I don't love trading up generally, but like that my team's sort of in the game, right? But at 30, even last year I think it would have been Brian Thomas, who ended up going to Jacksonville and being great for Jacksonville. I know the idea of the Bills trading up to get him came up a lot in here, and I definitely was against that. But that guy looks like a home run for the Jaguars at their pick. And I don't know, is there any reason, you tell me if you think so, because I would love to have it. Is there any reason to think about the Bills moving up here? Like for who? To draft a different defensive lineman, to draft a different corner? I mean, maybe. When the Bills they're not all the same. I'm coming at this from a standpoint of we don't know who's going to be good. Right? Neither do the Bills. So that's part of, you could have a serious conviction on one of the D linemen or one of the corners and not the other. But I mean, I think that's kind of rich. I mean, because traits wise, sure, but we're just not going to know how they're going to be as pros. So I tend to stay away from that. But if you did have that, you can get serious about, they should make this move to get to Kenneth Grant or Amos or whoever it is you want from the first round. And okay, I mean, again, if you're listening to this and thinking this is absolutely what should happen, talk to me. I mean, I'm not a trade up guy, but let's hear the argument. I just think so much depth, and I don't know what the other words might be for it, for me to think that's probably not worth it. But I always think that when it comes to trading up. And then trading down, that was last year's thing. The Bills had traded up a few times, like I just mentioned, and they got to last year's draft, and all right, we didn't need this pick for Worthy. Kansas City, go ahead. Then we didn't need the pick that they traded to Carolina. Okay, ends up on Coleman. And as I've said about that many times, I think that's all fine. I think the best thing about how they set that up would be to trade down a third time, with there being Coleman, McConkey, Polk, Mitchell, other guys at the top of the overall class. I mean, you had still a few receivers to pick from, and you have all day Friday. I don't know. I can't assume it was possible to do it, but you'd think so. All day Friday to make one more move and get something else out of your draft capital, and that's what the Bills didn't do, ultimately just making the pick for Coleman. So, I don't know. It doesn't mean they won't trade down this year, but would they want to trade? It's kind of an interesting thing to think about, trading out of the first round like they did. I mean, there's a certain clout to the first round pick, and, you have the press conference, and there's his jersey. We're all smiling, and here's your number one pick. You go down in history as that. And Coleman comes in instead as the first pick of round 2. So the Bills do not have quite the same, just doesn't have quite the same energy or clout, again, to use that word, as even the last pick of the first round would. So would the Bills, does it have to matter? No. But would they maybe want to get out of the first round for a second year in a row? Like, I don't know, I guess in a vacuum, I would tend to doubt it. 803-0550, here's John with us. Hi, John.
How you guys doing today? Hope you're doing well. I'm actually of the opinion that we're going to go up the board and try to get the Bruce Smith of this draft. I think we have enough draft capital to just go get the one or two things we need to make a push for the Super Bowl. I think we've been so lacking on defensive pressure. I think we sold out for an aging Von Miller. We're selling out for an aging Joey Bosa. What does it take to get us to 2, to 3, to 4, to get
Not
Carter?
possible. Not possible.
Not possible?
No. To get to the top 5?
Second, what gets us there?
To the top 5?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing gets us there.
No. There's no way to do it with draft picks. I mean, if you wanted to trade a couple of starters or something and a bunch of draft picks, then maybe. But not realistic, in my view.
Not realistic? So if he falls to 5 or 6, there's no way we make a push to go get him?
Not possible. You can make the push, make all the push you want, but who do you mean? Carter?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know, John. I doubt he gets to 5, but maybe. But I don't know. Show me I'm wrong. Like, it doesn't have to work exactly like the simulators, but we did a couple in here where I'm the Bills. I offered two complete years of draft picks to have some fun imagining getting to Travis Hunter, and I was told no. So I don't think there's any way you can do that. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't trade up at all, right, to somewhere in the middle of the first round, I guess, to get you know what? This is really kind of the point. I haven't even opened one of those draft chart value things yet this year. It's still a month away, in my defense, I guess. But I haven't even opened the Jimmy Johnson chart. Let me just do that right now. NFL draft. This is when Bulldog would talk. NFL draft value charts. There's different ones. I guess PFF would have its own. I'm on, first one that comes up for me is Draft Tech. All right, so I pick let's make it right? We're in this together. Why doesn't that come easily? We pick 30th. 620 points in value, according to drafttech.com. So the caller wants top 5. I mean, that's at the minimum. To get to Abdul Carter, that would be Jacksonville at 1,700. So that's all of my picks, which is never going to happen, and then something else from next year would be like equivalent in this. So again, like that's not happening. But I don't know. I've not spent much time on the players who come in like 15 to 20. And I hope very much the Bills don't do this. But if you were to look at this same chart, something like pick 30 and pick 62, their own second. They still have Minnesota's second as well through Houston from the Diggs trade. It's funny that it's Minnesota because the Bills didn't. That's not from the Bills trade for Diggs with the Vikings, but the Texans got the Vikings pick last year moving around in the draft, and then they traded it to Buffalo. So let's say I want to trade 30 and 62, and that gets me to like Seattle at 18. A first and a second to move up 12 spots. And look, I just have to say, I can't wait another second. Never do this. Never trade your 30 and 62 for 18 and still draft defense. That would be really dumb. I would be very much against that. What you want in a world where you just, of course, don't know who's going to be good, you want more chances. You want more lottery balls. And that's the opposite of trading the 2 picks to move up a dozen spots or whatever that would be. People do make, and look, the Bills are a pretty good example. They do make exceptions for quarterbacks. And that's, it's obvious why, because there's so much value there. There's so much riding on it. I've gone back and forth on whether I think that's even smart because, sometimes we get the quarterback position wrong too. Thanks, John. I wish your idea were more realistic because, believe me, I would run with it. I probably still wouldn't want to do it, but at least that's my point kind of overall here about this draft so far for me is I don't really know what I want them to do that I really have any conviction about. You want to draft defense because your defense went the wrong way last year, and offensively, you've got most of what you want or what you need with the offensive line pretty stable, and even as Sal has pointed out before, their depth up front, of course, Allen, receiver-wise, I think there should be some room for a receiver maybe by round 4 or at least by round 5. But they don't look like a team really primed for that, I want to say, and the class is just kind of mid. So I wouldn't get my hopes up there. So where does that leave you? If that's you, just pick a couple of these guys, defensive players, potential to be starters, Thursday night, Friday night, and go from there. And that is the Thursday night, the opening round, 1 month from today. 803-0550. Glad to have John's call. We'll get into some more, I hope, through the day, talking about the draft and other stuff for the Bills. I want to talk to Sal. We've certainly done some of this, but among other things here coming up next. So James Cook, Christian Benford, still under contract both. Like, these are not guys who are free agents like Douglas is. These guys who are on your roster. But both sort of in position for new contracts. Cook, of course, has been more vocal about it. As far as I know, I haven't seen anything from Benford, but he's probably at that point where they're expecting something for him long-term, big dollars. And I just wonder, so today is March 24th. When does it start to become a concern? Is it already? Like, the Bills have been really good at getting these kinds of things done and getting them done early, like they did this year with Shakir and Rousseau and Bernard. Just kind of like before you're even thinking about it. This happened with Allen. Not even, I don't mean this time, but like the first big contract, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, already. No drama, no back and forth in the media or anything like that. And it was just done. And I think I want to say from that as a compliment that that's how you'd like to do it. That's how the Bills have been able to do it in these other examples. So I've got Benford and Cook, and I don't have anything now. And I think that doesn't have to be any sort of bad omen, but I kind of wonder if it is, given how smoothly and quickly they've been able to get other deals done. So that and more with Sal coming up after a break. Tyler Dunn today as well. As we get later, Paul Hamilton reflecting on the Sabres weekend. The next game for them is tomorrow night at home against Ottawa. I'm Mike Schopp. Glad to have you. Bulldog is off this week. This is WGR.
Never miss a second of One Bills Live.
Back. Didn't start with the tournament today. I do have thoughts. One being, I'm dead. I'm out. I'm out of everything. This was like the most predictable tournament ever so far. Just favorites. The favorites even covered like crazy. But I'm in these survivor pools like with Trista and Joe Ostrowski, and it's about the game theory, right? So, all right, if everybody's going to pick Duke, I got to pick, Colorado State. It's still fresh in my mind, the end of that game. But it's interesting to talk about, and Sal Capaccio joins me now on the Wester Hotline. No doubt Sal has thoughts on this. I mean, it's 1 year, Sal, so even though it's like, it seems like it's tempting to take what's happened this year, the favorites just dominating like they have, and make this into what we think is the new normal. But it is still only 1 year. I don't know. It's a little bit sad, though, isn't it?
For sure. It's sad. I mean, for me, I've been reading a lot of stuff on it today. I've been tweeting about it a bit today. I mean, the stats are staggering. The numbers are staggering when it comes to the power programs and where they are compared to the rest this year compared to where it's been. Now, there's some nuance here. There's no doubt. There's been so much expansion and realignment that even a program like BYU, which I had to look up to make sure is now in the Big 12, that's normally considered, not a Power 4, Power 5 conference. But the overwhelming, sentiment is the mid-majors are getting squeezed out because of the way everything is with the portal and NIL. And I think this is going to be the new normal. I am all for Blue Bloods playing in the Elite Eight and Sweet 16. It's great when you see games like that. Duke against Kentucky is awesome. But it's just this year we had virtually hardly any upsets of note for teams that really were more of the mid-majors, Cinderellas. And those are always fun. And it just seems like this is the direction we are going because of where college sports is. And that's what's sad to me.
Yeah, like the tournament it's great for two things. It's great for those classic matchups. It's not only great for upsets, but the potential for upsets has us, edge of our seat. Can George Mason or Florida Atlantic, like we've had in recent years, make a run like that? But then, maybe they win a couple and you get to this week and I'm really not that interested in George Mason. But,
right.
So you want those classic matchups too. I don't know. Like it's tough. When I realized only last week before the tournament started that Florida Atlantic, which 2 years ago went to the Final Four, right? Florida Atlantic.
Yes, and last year did well too because their coach was Dusty May, who's now Michigan's coach.
Yes, like their best four players all made the tournament for other teams, including one on Michigan who went with the coach to Michigan, and a guy on like the second leading scorer or something on Florida. I'm like, wow. Well, I guess that's what we're talking about here. So little bit.
And Mike, I think this is just a larger discussion that sometime maybe we can have together. Maybe we could do it when we're together this week. I don't know, but it's something that's really interesting, and there's a lot of complicated layers to this. There's a lot of nuance to this because, like today, I see Justin Pippen, who is Scottie Pippen's son, is entering the transfer portal. He plays for Michigan. They are in the tournament still. They're playing in the Sweet 16. Like it's wild, and I'm all for the players getting paid, and I do think they should be allowed to move, in certain situations. But like, what if we had NFL, every professional sport? Let's just take the NFL, and just imagine if the NFL had. Think about this for a second, everybody. If the NFL had every single year free agency, no contracts, everybody's a free agent, and every team had no salary cap. That's exactly what college is right now.
Yeah, and it's not great for the fans. Right? Like,
no.
The point of it all should be what's best for the fans, but it does get tricky because I think it's with good intentions that players have this kind of power and can make money, where there's so much money being made by the schools. But, sometimes in life, unintended consequences, whether maybe that's cannabis, which, not to get political, but, should people have this right? Okay, yes. And then, so many times you're just driving and you smell the smoke, or you just go somewhere random and it just smells like smoke. I really didn't want that, but I guess that's what I got because, this change was made societally. Okay, well, if I didn't lose you, I brought it up already, Sal, with the Bills, thinking about James Cook, Christian Benford, two players that seem, as we've talked about many times, positioned for like their next contract, if not even a big contract, more so in Benford's case. So today, March 24th, when would you start to get nervous, if at all, or if not already? I made the point before, like the Bills have been so quick and easy, it seems, with a lot of these deals, including a few this year already, that maybe somebody would think they're already in a little bit of a jackpot with these guys because there haven't been deals yet. Of course, you could also say that even like training camp is still a long ways off. How would you look at it?
Well, I would look at it two ways. There'd be only two instances. There's a timeline I'd be nervous and an instance I'd be nervous. If you don't see them show up for stuff, like the stuff that really counts and they can be fined for, now we're having an issue. And now that's when you start to get, okay, something's got to get resolved here. But it's just so rare now because of how much money these guys have to forfeit. Otherwise, Mike, if everything's status quo right now, as it stands, and they go to training camp, I don't think it matters for 11 months, to be quite honest with you. They're under contract. They play, and then you still have another month after the season to try and work something out. How many times did we see guys this year sign with their teams before they actually hit the open market? That's what you could do, and I still think that there would be a legitimate chance for that to happen. They could also place transition tags and franchise tags. So I don't think there's any reason whatsoever to be nervous, as you put it. However, their actions could create you to cause you to be that.
So I don't know if this is still a guess, I would think, even for you on the inside, closer to the inside than I am, but you would think probably both guys show up even without a new deal? Like that's their choice.
For training camp, yes. I think I'm very interested to see what happens during OTAs and minicamp. The voluntary stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see these guys. I'm not predicting they're not going to. I think that, however they want to handle it, they want to handle it. And if James Cook isn't there for the voluntary stuff, okay. Christian Benford isn't, fine. I mean, that's what happens sometimes. I mean, guys sometimes don't show up for the voluntary stuff unrelated to their contract just because they're like, hey, I want more time with my family and I'm going to be doing football for the next whatever months. When it gets to training camp, as I sit here right now, yes, I would guess that if they're in the current state with 1 year left on their deal, I think they show up because they would be fined massively every single day that they don't.
Sal Capaccio on the Wester hotline. How big is it going to get for Benford? Like top what? Have you thought about that?
I have, and it's a really good question because I think you can really kind of turn yourself around a little bit thinking about that, which I mean by that is, does he have the production of the interceptions? No, he's not some ball hawk that puts up these big numbers and you're like, oh yeah, he's got to be paid amongst those guys, but he is very, very good at what he does for you. He has very good analytics grades if you want to go down that road. Like, how do you want to approach this? And kind of reminds me of in the NHL or Major League Baseball when you have arbitration and you got to go into a room and the team kind of has to argue against you a little bit, right? Well, you're not as good as you think you are because of this. Like, there's always different ways that you have to figure out where he basically slots in. And if you look at the top paid corners in the league right now, I mean, Stingley just signed for $30 million a year. J.C. Horn, $25 million. And what's funny is when Horn signed for that, I tweeted, okay, now, this is going to impact Benford. And several people said, well, he's not J.C. Horn. Well, I think you could argue he's J.C. Horn. I don't think J.C. Horn has been spectacular. I think Christian Benford is in that group. I don't think he's Patrick Surtain. Jair Alexander's getting paid $21 million. He's fantastic, but he's been very injured lately. So he's probably in that next tier. You're talking $20 million a year right there.
Do you think draft capital means anything in this equation? So the two players you mentioned that got the big contracts were both first-round picks, even kind of early first-round picks. And here's Benford, a success story from the 6th round. Does that matter anymore?
I don't think it does. Because from the Bills' standpoint, if he's worthy, he's worthy. From your standpoint, I think, especially from the player's standpoint, the player doesn't care what round he was drafted in. If he's performed well for you, that's all that should matter to him, and I agree with that. So, no, I don't think so. But I do think from a look standpoint, it could matter for teams. From a PR standpoint, it could matter to teams. Like you draft J.C. Horn, you draft Derek Stingley as first-round picks. You get to their third and fourth year, and they're really good. You want to make sure you do everything you can to that first-round pick panned out for you. Whereas maybe you don't, I guess, do that where I could see that point. You don't have to have that urgency, I guess, if it's a sixth-round pick. But I think once you get 3 years in to 4 years in, it's about performance, and you pay what the performance matters to the player. Look at Brock Purdy, right, where he is right now. He was Mr. Irrelevant. It didn't matter where he was drafted, and we could debate all day long about how much he's worth, but I don't think it matters where he was drafted as it relates to his contract.
It may not, but it's still like right there. Top of mind all the time. Like, is he supposed to be good? Is Benford in his way supposed to be good? Maybe the people that are contacting you about how good J.C. Horn is, like, crush Panthers film. Probably not. Probably the difference is they've heard of him. They've heard of him and they can see, enough about how other people think he's good. It's like, that's the ball game. Maybe not.
Well, let me give a couple examples here if I'm looking. Let's go back to 2020. Matt Milano was a fifth-round pick. And I know 2020 he took a lesser deal than what he probably would have made other years because of COVID, and it hurt the salary cap, but he was paid pretty handsomely. Spencer Brown, third round, I guess you can't go down that road. But, there's been guys that the Bills have paid and rewarded. Taron Johnson, fourth-round pick. They gave him a nice deal. So I think he's on his third contract now, if I'm not mistaken. So is he top of the market? I guess he's near there for a nickel corner. It's not $30 million a year or $25 million a year, but I don't think the Bills play that kind of game. You know what I mean?
Yes. I saw your graphic last night, by the way. Bills picks by round since 2018. Yeah. It's odd that they only have 3 fourth-round picks in, 7 years?
It is weird. And, if you look back, and it's understandable why, what Brandon Beane has done is he has used fourth-round picks oftentimes to move up in other rounds, in the second round, in the first round, in the third round. They have 3 fourth-round picks in 7 drafts under Brandon Beane. That is wild to me. Taron Johnson, Gabe Davis, and Ray Davis, all good picks, by the way, I would say at this point. But, only 3 fourth-round picks in 7 years.
And those are often your comp picks, too, and the Bills haven't exactly cleaned up in comp picks, but you've got a little bit of that this year, at least.
Yep.
So when you, by the way, on that point, that graphic, when you analyze like the whole Brandon Beane era here for the draft, what if any are your takeaways? Because we of course get the calls and have these conversations, and kind of everybody sounds like they end up at good and bad. And wouldn't that just be anybody after this amount of time? You'd have hits and misses, but I don't know. Is there more to say for you about the job he's done?
Yeah, there is. I think I'm fascinated by how many people have responded looking at this graphic saying, oh my God, there's so many misses. And then, if they say which the misses are, and I have a complete different perspective on that. For example, somebody today, Jaquan Johnson was a miss. Jaquan Johnson was a 6th-round pick who played 4 years for you. That is not a miss. He's playing more than the average career in the NFL as a core special teams player. Ray McLeod, maybe at the time for the Bills didn't work out. He actually played quite a bit last year, and he's been in the league for quite a while. I don't consider that being a miss for a player. So I think that the perspective of hits and misses for a lot of people is very skewed. And I think, what are you expecting from a 6th-round pick? If you're expecting all pros, then everybody's a miss, right? If you're expecting Christian Benford's a 6th-round pick. He is a complete outlier and totally has outperformed his draft position. But when you look, Damar Hamlin is not a miss as a 6th-round pick. Damar Hamlin's been a good 6th-round pick. He started at safety pretty much every game for a team that went to the AFC Championship game. He's played 4 years in the NFL. That's not a miss when you get to the 6th round. But if you want to talk about where he has missed, so that's the positive. I think what's been missing is, other than Josh Allen, the high-end talent. That's where the Bills have really kind of not hit. They don't have these superstars they've drafted other than Josh Allen. Maybe James Cook is on his way to being that after the last year or so. But he has to me, he's had kind of a higher floor, Brandon Beane, with a lot of the guys, but he hasn't quite hit the ceiling other than a guy like Josh Allen. There's guys in there who've been good, and Taron Johnson is one of the best at his position. There's no doubt. Is he, oh my God, he's an elite corner and, wearing a gold jacket someday. Maybe that's too much to ask, but I do think after 7 years, the criticism could be, well, where's the higher end talent been other than the guys who've been just really good and you get value from in those rounds?
There's always so much to say, which at the same time is kind of maddening because most analysis ends up just being relatively superficial. But also, like, it's part of the fun of it is how many different angles there are. One being some of these guys, maybe any team, if the team is really good and you've got veterans all over the field who are stars like the Bills have had for most of this time, I mean, that makes it that much harder for anybody that you're drafting to become relevant. Like they don't have the same opportunity as they would on a bad team. Also, these, of course, are usually end of the first round, end of every round picks. So your chances of hitting are going to be at least a little bit harder than if you were picking earlier. So that and more.
I like that point a lot, Mike. I make it all the time. It's part of the reason why, sometimes they say, I can't see them using 10 picks because 10 guys aren't making this team. However, they did use 10 picks last year. They picked 10 guys last year. So maybe they do it again this year because they're still trying to supplement the roster with some cheaper talent given some of the high-end contracts they paid out, and they have to think about that going forward. Another takeaway, by the way, I'll say, he's done really well in the third round, especially with the floor, like I said. Spencer Brown, Terrell Bernard, Harrison Phillips, Dawson Knox, Devin Singletary, Dorian Williams, Zach Moss, and Dwayne Carter, who the book's still out on. But I think that's a solid third-round group over 7 years.
Is there a common thread? I'm thinking of like the school size, not really. I wonder if there's a common thread.
In fact, Mike, one of the anecdotes that I looked at with the draft, and this is not a criticism from me, I think it's just a fun fact because it's not just Brandon Beane. Brandon Beane in 7 years has never drafted a player from Alabama, a player from Michigan, or a player from Ohio State. I'm sure there's others, but those jumped out to me. I went back and looked, though. I said, okay, well, that's kind of odd. Is it really, though? Brett Veach has 7 years with the Chiefs. Never drafted a player from Alabama, never drafted a player from Ohio State, 1 fifth-rounder from Michigan.
Wonder why. Just a fluke?
I don't...
Coincidence?
I guess it just shows that you don't really care where the guy went to school, really. Mm-hmm. You evaluate the guy, not the school. Those schools haven't, Alabama has, but Ohio State and Michigan have had a couple down years there. So, and it's not like they avoid them. Levi Wallace went to Alabama. They signed him. So you do get guys that come in. But I just think it's kind of interesting. It does tell me, too, that like where your draft picks went to school has really no correlation of how good your roster is or how good your organization is.
Clearly, it's time for the Bills to start drafting more guys from Wyoming. Don't you think, Sal?
I guess so, yeah.
That's worked out pretty well so far. Are you at a point 1 month away today from the first round of the draft where you have a player even, or just sort of an expectation maybe, but like a best-case scenario?
I just think the best-case scenario is the best defensive tackle that they like to fall to them. Whatever player that is, I don't know if I have necessarily a favorite right now as I look at it. There's a few guys. I had Eric Turner on today from Cover One who has a few names that he liked to fit the Bills for their scheme. But to me, I just think this is a good year where their need meets value, meaning this is a deep defensive tackle draft. The Bills need still defensive tackles. And I like that idea still. But the more we go on here between now and next month, I'm very much open to they might have to take a corner with their first pick. I still want to see how this shakes out between now and then. If this roster has not changed, Mike, between now and a month from now, I may be much more in on I think they need to grab a corner earlier than they do defensive tackle.
Which is tough. I mean, you don't want to have to draft for need, right? Like that's what Elam was. Would you not say that? I mean, that's what
I would.
He was, and doesn't mean it can't work out, but you really don't want to have to draft for need. You want to just draft for positional value and, all right, well, I've got somebody in the spot right now, but that won't last forever. It's just not that cut and dried. But, that would be a better place to be. All right, we've got the tournament. We talked about that. Draft in a month. Opening day, the real opening day this week. You know the Yankees' first 3 series are against National League teams?
I did not realize that.
Milwaukee, Arizona, and then they're in Pittsburgh next weekend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's early. I remember the COVID year, they were in Cleveland the week before the NFL draft, so it would be right around that time or so. And we went to Cleveland, And it was cold going to those opening games that week. It was also because it was 25% capacity at every stadium. It was hardly anybody there. But man, I don't love the baseball season starting this early. I don't love it ending as late as it does. And I've often had an idea where I know they won't do it because of money. Like they should go back to more double headers because you could literally shave off like probably 3 weeks of the season if you play enough double headers.
And again, I want to say, by next weekend, I don't mean this weekend. This weekend is the first real weekend of the baseball season. Yanks are home to Milwaukee. Then it's Arizona. And April 4th, 5th, and 6th, they're in Pittsburgh, all-day games. That's the home opener for the Pirates on Friday, April 4th. So I'm sure some of you will be heading down for that. And you've been there, I assume.
Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Yes. We went to one game there a while. In fact, it was even before Max was born. We saw the Marlins play. Now, I've been outside that stadium many times. I've been to Pittsburgh many times. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Actually went again last year. When the Bills were there, I went. I saw Paul Skeens pitch last year.
Okay.
I forgot about that. How could I forget about that, Mike? But I went there. And I got to tell you, it's a great story real quick. We go to this game, me and a bunch of the guys, the Bills radio crew, and our buddy Bill Whipper, I was sitting with Bill, and I happen to be sitting next to a woman, and she's rooting for the Mariners they were playing. And I said, "Oh, are you from Seattle?" She says, "Yeah, out that way." I said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "I'm with a group. We actually help run the Roberto Clemente Museum." I said, "Oh, really?" So then I started talking to the people, and the guy next to me is like, "Sal, like if you want to go," he said, "I'll literally come to your hotel and pick you up tomorrow. You need to see this thing." So me and Bill Whipper went to the Roberto Clemente Museum, got like a private tour. Mike, it was fascinating and phenomenal.
Yeah.
If you ever get a chance in Pittsburgh to go to the Roberto Clemente Museum, I know Mike would absolutely love it.
Is it near the stadium?
Probably a 10-minute drive, maybe
Okay.
15.
Not super close then. All right. Thanks for the tip. And thanks for your time, as always, Sal.
You got it. Thanks.
Sal Capaccio on the West Her Hotline. He and I will be co-hosting on Wednesday this week as we're live from Roswell Park for the kickoff of the Ride for Roswell fundraiser, the festivities there. He'll be co-hosting with me this Wednesday. Not next Wednesday, this Wednesday. Next weekend is this is one of my dad's things. There's this weekend, which is, Saturday and Sunday ahead, and then, okay. That's annoying enough. I will talk to Tyler Dunn after the update. This is Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off this week. Thanks for listening to WGR.
back-to-back this weekend. They wrapped that up with a win over Winnipeg yesterday, and now they'll be back in action tomorrow when they host Ottawa, which means it'll be the return of former forward Dylan Cozens, who was traded to the Senators at the deadline. And in his 8 games with Ottawa, Cozens has 3 goals and 7 points. When speaking with the Ottawa media today, Cozens did offer some quick thoughts on his return to Buffalo.
I'm excited. It's going to be a little weird for sure, but, going to try not to overthink it. It's, at the end of the day, just another game and, a big 2 points that we need.
Light night overall in the NHL. Just 4 games. 2 at 7:30. The Devils host Vancouver, and the Islanders, they have the Blue Jackets in town. At 8, the Wild are in Dallas to take on the Stars. And then at 9, Detroit, they are out west to take on Utah. Over in college basketball, the men's tournament is through the first 2 rounds. All 4 1 seeds still alive, and just 1 double-digit seed has advanced to the second weekend. John Calipari's 10-seeded Arkansas Sweet 16 is going to get underway on Thursday. While for the women's bracket, they are finishing up the round of 32 today. And in the women's NIT, UB came back against UMass. They will now take on Southern Indiana on Thursday. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
The base part of the banana where the fruit is, wrap foil around that top and they will last longer.
I'm something of a scientist myself.
Who needs your bananas to last longer, though?
Look, I don't want to go to the store every other day for bananas.
They're 8 cents each.
What the hell are you talking about? What's going on?
You're going to wrap them in foil?
They're better when they're just a little green. Yeah.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Too much work.
Not that much trouble, really.
Too much work.
Says the guy that's got a spreadsheet with 3,000 fantasy teams.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Priorities, I guess, is really all. Go ahead, wrap your bananas. See what I care. Just, why not? I might, not want to. Go touch some grass instead. But Bulldog, that's what he's into. He seems like a happy guy. Guess it's working for him. Joining me now on the West Her hotline is also someone I consider to be a pretty happy guy, the way I see him, Tyler Dunn, golongtd.com, especially when you're hanging out in New York with friends for a wedding. Seem happy.
Yes, I ran into Bulldog at the airport. It was nice.
You did? How about that?
Yeah, he was heading to, a cruise? Or he was doing his own little vacay. Not quite a wedding.
Right.
But it was a nice little 5 a.m. Conversation there. I think we both had a little coffee in us, so we were awake. It was enjoyable. Yeah.
Puerto Rico. Yep. Not a cruise guy at all, Bulldog. He's traveled a lot the last few years, but I don't think we'll ever see him on a boat. At least the size of many houses anyway. So, Tyler, I was reading, this, Bob McGinn on the wide receivers in this draft class earlier today. Didn't really need to start with this, but I'm thinking about it, having read from your website earlier today, and I am spooked. This is WGR. This is the wide receiver train station here. Like always with the wide receiver thirst when it comes to those of us here, but your guy has some sources, some scouts who really don't like most of these guys very much at all, it seems.
Exactly. Yeah, it sounds like one of the worst wide receiver classes in recent memory. And just for a little background, Bob McGinn's done this draft series for 41 years. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's talking to these scouts and execs all the time. So he's as plugged in as anybody I've ever met in the business. And he's beholden to nobody, which is, our whole reason for existence, right? That's why I love just readers subscribing to support this thing. So it's going to be the real. It's going to be the good, the bad, the ugly. I know we can kind of flip our TVs on and it's all puppies and rainbows when it comes to the NFL draft. But I can remember this time a couple years ago, like Malik Willis was projected 2nd or 3rd overall. So, and we're watching these highlights of him running all over the field for Liberty. It's a crazy time of year. Everybody gets hyped up beyond belief. So I always look forward to Bob's analysis because it's rooted in those endless conversations with scouts from around the NFL. And yeah, this class is full of red flags and, in so many words, prima donnas, guys who aren't necessarily going to work hard on the other 6 days of the week. But you know what, too, Mike? Like, that's part of the position. I feel like at the wide receiver position, at the cornerback position, edge, you're going to have some personality red flags, and you've got to take a chance on somebody, and it's just a matter of taking the right gamble and hitting it.
Yeah, and I don't want to stereotype. I mean, obviously, that's the reputation of wide receivers for the most part already. But let's maybe give these guys a little bit of a break. I mean, we're talking about 20 years old, and they're making money, which is a new thing for the college athlete, the college stars. So there should be some of that. We know, of course, there are many receivers who might have been thought to have attitude problems who've made the league and done amazingly well. I think, Tyler, the importance of the position still dictates that these guys are going to get picked. I mean, it's not going to be a slide where they all go to Saturday or anything like that. I would think you could still have around, my guess would be, you still have around a dozen that go by the end of round 3.
Oh, I totally agree with every single thing you just said. Like, I'm not saying if you need a wide receiver, you should, sit this draft out and sign a veteran who goes to church every Sunday. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to take a chance if you're interested in winning. And you're right, 20 years old, 21 years old, we've all made some mistakes at that age, and you throw in millions of dollars, and they're surrounded by a lot of yes men, yes women. Agents are getting to them now, and they're 15 years old in some cases.
Yeah.
So it's a different world. I'll say this though, exactly at this point, 365 days ago, when Bob dropped his wide receiver story, a lot of it focused around A.D. Mitchell at Texas, and I believe was a diabetic and didn't always take his meds. And this is not coming from me or Bob. I mean, these scouts, coaches concerned about that on top of what it did to his personality, what he's like day to day, what his workouts. I had one coach reach out unsolicited to me when this thing went viral and said it was the worst workout he's ever seen in his life. Like the kid just upright quit. I mean, it was a lot of scathing analysis on the person, on the player. And then the Colts drafted him in the second round, and I guess a GM is going to do this, but Chris Ballard just mother effed us up and down and just ripped Bob, ripped the reports, all of this, as is his right, standing by his guy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, A.D. Mitchell was a disaster last year as a rookie. That's not to say his career's over, but his rookie year went about as terribly as it possibly could have gone. So maybe these scouts do know what the hell they're talking about when they criticize a prospect.
Sometimes. Tyler Dunn, my guest here on the Wester Hotline. I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off today, as Tyler has confirmed. The Bills and this position also, like this is the continuing saga, Tyler, on our radio station. Like, how likely for you is it that they pick a wide receiver by, again, the end of the second day? They've added Joshua Palmer. Hollins is gone. Cooper, it appears, will be gone. He's not signed anywhere else yet, as far as I know. I keep coming back to that they transformed going back to the previous season into more of a running team, 6 linemen on the field, and in the end, their quarterback won an MVP award without a clear wide receiver one, to put it mildly. So I kind of think, well, that worked, and I'd expect more of that, which explains kind of how there hasn't been a bigger move, partly explains, at wide receiver this year. How do you think it ends up?
I think that this draft is going to be pretty defense heavy, especially at the top. It just, all of the signs kind of point it to that direction. I mean, they've got some new coaches, especially on the D-line. They signed three D linemen, 2 of which are suspended. But, I mean, Joey Bosa, if he's healthy, I mean, that's a massive if. What a steal that is for $14 million. But I still feel like it's going to be defense heavy, and McDermott is going to want to add a piece with his fingerprints all over this draft selection. I don't know, it's a gut feeling more than anything, but just the way these seasons keep ending, short of changes bigger than personnel, which they're not going to happen, maybe the head coach calls plays at some point. I don't know. I mean, he has his trust in Bobby Babich, had a lot of nice things to say. The changes are going to be personnel and finding a piece for that side of the ball, because I think that they've dropped some hints too. I mean, Brandon Beane, in so many words, and I think you got to agree with him when he says, look, the offense averaged 30-plus points a game, rushed for 30-plus touchdowns, threw for 30-plus touchdowns. There's reasons to be disappointed when the ball flutters off of Dalton Kincaid's hands when he's diving for that, and Keon Coleman disappears at the end of the year. But I never really thought they were going to do anything drastic on that side of the ball and part with draft capital or sign a big money deal after they just kind of ate all the Stephon Diggs money. It's all about Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, your top 2 picks in back-to-back years, taking massive steps. I mean, and they're telling us this. I mean, it's really rare, I feel like, for any GM to sit there 48 hours after a season ends and say, like, paraphrasing, like, Keon Coleman's got to respond better when he has an injury. He's got to fight through it. And Dalton Kincaid needs to get stronger. They were blunt. So I feel like they kind of set that tone early in the offseason that offensively improvements coming from within, as it should, from 2 of your top picks.
I know they're young, and in Coleman's case, a rookie, but I'm not super optimistic here on really either guy, Tyler. And part of it is the tone and what you're describing, but that's not going to have to mean a lot. And maybe they will get the changes from the players that they need. But I don't want to hear that they need my supposed seam stretching tight end to get stronger. Like, to running the risk of overreacting to that can also mean like sort of maintenance, durability, not just sort of like weight and strength and what that might mean for what kind of role he's going to play. But yeah, I didn't love hearing that.
Right, because what does that entail? Like, I don't know, man. And they drafted Dalton Kincaid, right? Aggressively traded up for Dalton Kincaid. Weren't Brandon Beane's words like they see a lot of Cole Beasley in him in terms of how he can kind of nestle into those pockets of a defense, and there's a twitchiness. And I mean, you drafted him because he is a weapon and a seam stretcher, and he's been around these tight ends. I mean, Brandon Beane was in Carolina when they've got Greg Olsen and Jeremy Shockey, which, by the way, Jeremy Shockey saved somebody's life when he was in Carolina. Somebody's choking in training camp. Shockey just gets up from his seat, performs the Heimlich, saves his life, sits back down, and finishes his steak. I'm pretty sure Brandon Beane was around for that. So he knows the importance of a good tight end.
As do you.
Maybe we are.
Yes.
I was going to throw the shameless plug in, but I'll stop myself, Mike. I'll stop. But I think that I don't want to read into his words too much. Like when he says he has to beef up, get stronger, I don't think he's going to like Mark Bruner extremes, right? Like Jay Remersma. I don't think that's what Beane envisions. I think he still knows that Kincaid needs to be a downfield weapon, somebody they go to on 3rd and 8 with everything on the line, not necessarily inline blocker for an offense that's going to run the ball 40-plus times.
Let's hope. Tyler Dunn on the line, Mike Schopp here. This is WGR. You know, one thing I've been thinking about, and we've been talking about a little, as far away as the season still is, and there are going to be lots more changes. Of course, we still have the draft yet, is so the last 2 years in the AFC, same 4 division winners each of the 2 seasons, same 4 semifinalists in the playoffs, KC, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Houston. They all have, to varying degrees, good to great young quarterbacks, or at least not old. And, you know, on the surface at least, maybe it's crazy to think, especially if you eliminate the Texans, who are not a great team, that the top teams will falter at all without like an injury or something that would obviously cause that or could. I just wonder, though, in the NFL, you get used to, for years, it's been like how changeable and unpredictable it is. And I wonder if the AFC right now going into next year is really testing that. You have not only the top teams, Tyler, but a half dozen or so that seem like there's almost no chance you could imagine them winning. Jets, I guess the draft, if it's Cam Ward or Sanders even, like Titans, Browns could change a little bit. But some of the bad teams don't look like they're exactly set up to make a big move necessarily. So I wonder if you see the conference sort of like staying the course, top teams dominate, there's a lot of bottom feeders like there was last year, or if you could see some movement, maybe a New England or somebody as a team that you think maybe people will be wrong to write off.
I like the question. I mean, well, first of all, to besmirch Kenny Pickett in the Cleveland Browns, like, I mean, we can't forget about a team like that. It's true, though. It is just Allen, Mahomes, Burrow. I think you put Cincinnati in there. I know their defense was an atrocity last year, but, I mean, those weapons, they can just outscore you any given day. Allen, Burrow, Mahomes, Lamar, as long as these guys are in their prime, I mean, these are the quarterbacks. These are the teams that are going to be in the mix every single year, and as long as they stay healthy. And it does kind of zap some of the fun out of it. I mean, maybe Stroud enters that discussion, but he was bad for stretches last season too, and they just remade his whole offensive line. I think it just underscores the significance in, right, newsflash, you need a star quarterback to be central to everything you do if you're interested in winning Super Bowls, and it kind of leads teams to do some desperate things. And you've seen teams trying to get creative and get funky. And I mean, I guess Pittsburgh now, they make the trade for DK Metcalf, and they've got TJ Watt still, in his prime. Cam Hayward's holding on. Minka Fitzpatrick, everywhere around the position, they're built to win now contractually. Mike Tomlin's always knocking on the door, but the blind spot for that team is the quarterback position. They just cannot get it right. They hung on to Ben Roethlisberger too long. They drafted the wrong guy in Kenny Pickett. They went by on the cheap with Russ Wilson, Justin Fields. Hell, you get what you pay for, and both ended up being really, really bad and not on the same levels, the top guys. And now desperation is leading them to Aaron Rodgers, who will nuke the building. And Mike Tomlin will never get fired, I guess, but it's not going to end well. So I think that's why you just see teams take chances at quarterback in the draft, gut their capital for a top pick on the chance that maybe he's a guy that can one day compete with those four aforementioned quarterbacks, because I don't really know who enters that discussion. You'd love to say Herbert. I feel like we've been talking about Herbert forever, and he hasn't taken that step. Sean Payton, Bo Nix, maybe, but I don't think Nix is ready to come close to stepping into the ring with those top four quarterbacks. And then the Dolphins, right? They've been teasing us forever. I don't. It seems simplistic, but if you're going to project one of those other teams and other quarterbacks to get to the AFC Championship game, let alone win it, I think you're just guessing. You're just throwing a dart. I mean, this is what it's going to be for the foreseeable future.
Even Trevor Lawrence, maybe. I can kind of imagine that. I mean, he's been to the playoffs. I can kind of imagine it, but they're coming from pretty far back after last year. The obligatory Aaron Rodgers question, you mentioned it already with the Steelers and the dalliance there, whatever it is. It's interesting to imagine him playing for Tomlin. Because Rodgers has been this, I mean, this is a very nice word for it, but this dominant presence, and coaches with him have just kind of seemed like, I don't know, unable or unwilling to push back. I guess maybe that's a fair way to put it. Is Tomlin going to be like that? Will it matter, right? I mean, Rodgers going to play the quarterback position, and maybe there doesn't need to be much going on between any given quarterback and head coach. But I wonder if Tomlin might be, able to make Rodgers kind of seem sane.
Yeah, you're a hopeless romantic, Mike. I give you credit.
I'm saying maybe. Just maybe.
I mean, he's the best quarterback they've had since Ben Roethlisberger, so they'll have that going for him. Mike Tomlin has always just kind of given all offensive responsibilities and delegated the quarterback position and the quarterback responsibilities to other people, to his detriment. I mean, Matt Canada should have never been hired and should have never have lasted as long as he lasted. I've talked to Steeler players about that offense, and their eyes rolled to the back of their head. I mean, it was so predictable. Defenses knew exactly what they were going to run before the snap, and to a fault, Tomlin was loyal. Tomlin just stuck to his defense and his big picture approach of, we're going to muck this game up, and Miles Killebrew is going to block a kick, and TJ Watt's going to tip a pass, and we're going to win this disgusting 13-9 game. And there's some beauty to that. There's an art to that, I suppose, because the Steelers win those kinds of games, but he's just not getting involved with the quarterback position, not getting involved with the offense. And I think with Aaron Rodgers, he's probably thinking, well, what's our better alternative here? He's the best on the market, and I guess 3 years ago he won an MVP. I think Aaron Rodgers is coming in with full autonomy. Nobody's telling him what to do. Tomlin's not telling him what to do. Arthur Smith's not telling him what to do. DK Metcalf, George Pickett. he's coming in and he's going to run his offense. He's going to do it his way, and that's that. He's not going to change at 41. No chance, no way. I don't care what he says on Pat McAfee. Like, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers to the end, and it's not going to end well. I mean, he's, aside from all the BS that you got to deal with on the other 6 days of the week, he's just old, and he can't move like he once moved. And, against good teams, he was terrible last year. I mean, the stats are all puffed up from beating up on Jacksonville and whatnot. The Steelers are stuck. I don't know what you do if you're the Steelers at quarterback. So, hell, you might as well make it dramatic and theatrical and interesting, and we'll care about the Steelers. And it's going to end in 8-9 and no playoffs for the first time. There you go.
There's a prediction. One more for you, Tyler. I know you've spent time with Jameis Winston before. He goes to the Giants, and the Giants are one of these bad teams where maybe like they have to win this year for the sake of their coach and or GM. And so maybe they're not done at quarterback either, but Winston going there is interesting. Chances of success. Funny you say Rodgers is going to be Rodgers. Winston is going to be Winston, right? There's going to be highs and lows.
It's going to be fun for your purposes, right, with fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Malik Neighbors is probably going to have like 3,000 yards. He'll throw the ball to your team. He'll throw the ball to the other team. It's going to be entertaining. I don't know if he's going to be the starter, though. I wouldn't be surprised if they signed Russell Wilson, right? The quarterback competition that Joe Shane and Brian Daboll were absolutely anticipating 4 years into this regime. Jameis Winston against Russell Wilson. It's another team. In their case, it just seems like terrible timing. I mean, we could go through it year to year, but to win early, it backed them into a corner with Daniel Jones, and you're out of range of a quarterback in the draft. It's just been an awful catalytic series of events for that GM, that coach. I think they have to draft somebody, though. I'm not sure if Shedeur Sanders is worth the third overall pick. Really looking forward to seeing what Bob gleans from the scouts. But whether it's him at some point in the first round or a Jackson Dart, I got to think that they draft somebody and give Daboll the opportunity to coach that player. That's why you hired this GM and this coach. It's all of the work they did discovering, recruiting, identifying Josh Allen as the guy, and then, in Daboll's case, developing him into arguably the greatest player in the sport. So who is that in this class? I don't have a clue. But if Daboll has an opinion, if Shane has an opinion, you've got to find that guy. You've got to get that guy. And you just have to show something this year. I don't know if they have to win, make the playoffs or they're out kind of deal, but they've got to show that things are moving in the right direction. And they've actually drafted some decent players last year. Their class was full of talent. If they can do something positive at quarterback in the draft, I think they have their jobs beyond this year.
Interesting. Shedeur Sanders is realistic from both angles, I think, team and player. Dad says he wants him there. Dion got a question about what's the best case scenario in his mind, and he said New York. So maybe we get that at pick 3. The trade up seems less likely because now Tennessee reportedly is all over Cam Ward. So for a minute, there was the Giants moving up for him, and now it looks like, who knows, but it looks like maybe they're not going to have that chance. Tyler, before you go, golongtd.com, the draft series, and what else can we look forward to?
Oh, man. Bob's series is great. We'll have that run in the next 2 weeks, and this is just a great time of year to kind of chip away at some longer stories. I've got a couple that I've been working on, conversations with scouts and coaches, and without giving too much away, we'll have some pretty big stories, let's say in a month or so. It kind of depends. You never really know when the right time is, but guys have time on their hands to talk and reflect and tell you stuff that they're not necessarily going to broadcast at a podium. So that's always the goal.
Makes sense. Very good. Thanks as always for your time, Tyler.
Hey, thank you, Mike.
All right, Tyler Dunn on the Western Hotline, golongtd.com. Yeah, these receivers, reading about these receivers at his site today, I got a little scared. But you still want to have that weapon. And if it's not the best year to draft one, well, other years were hit and miss results. Last year, for example, it's a great example. I wouldn't want to be scared off. Round 2, the Bills don't have a pick in round 3. You can get those. Though I think that might be about perfect for this idea for me. What is your idea for the draft? Defense is where everybody seems to be sitting. I have a tough time sort of coming up with a real opinion, one player over another, or even necessarily one position. You've got corner, interior defensive line. We're a month away, 803-0550. I'm taking that as a reason to get back into the draft, but, I'll take anything for that. Love to talk about it. Want to spend some time on the tournament, too, and just the trend with all the top teams rolling here this year. So we'll get into some of that, too. Paul Hamilton in just over an hour. Lines open. Mike Schopp here, WGR.
Never miss a second.
The Buffalo Sabres are off today after splitting a back-to-back over the weekend. They'll next be in action tomorrow when they host Ottawa, and with that, it'll be the return of former forward Dylan Cousins, who was traded from the Sabres to the Senators at this year's deadline. And in 8 games with Ottawa so far, Cousins has 3 goals and 7 points. In the NHL, though, this evening, very light night, just 4 games. 2 at 7:30, the Devils host Vancouver, and then the Islanders have the Blue Jackets in town. At 8, the Wild are in Dallas to take on the Stars, and then at 9 o'clock sees Detroit out west to take on Utah. And then over in college basketball, both tournaments well underway. The men's tournament is through the first 2 rounds. All 4 1 seeds still alive, and just one double-digit seed has advanced to the second weekend. John Calipari's 10-seeded Arkansas. Sweet 16 is going to get underway on Thursday, while for the women, they're finishing up the round of 32 this afternoon. And then the women's NIT, UB, they came back against UMass over the weekend. They will now take on Southern Indiana on Thursday. That's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550. WGR Sports Radio 550.
Jackson was never a preferred starter for the Bills. He started 28 games over 4 seasons. They've had to use him a ton. Kyrie almost had to play a good amount. So I think it's very important to have depth in place. I think the Bills did a good job of finding a floor with bringing in Dave Jackson, but I think they need to find some ceiling, and that's why I'm expecting probably an early investment with a draft pick to get a player that not only gives them more ceiling and upside, but, as you're about to potentially pay Christian Benford a big-time contract, you're going to want a cost-control player that's secure for multiple years. I think you accomplish that with a draft pick.
Joe Marino on our morning show last week. Mike Schopp here. Bulldog is off. Lines open for you, 803-0550. The NFL draft is one topic that we're on today and probably will be on and into every day for a month until the draft opens. Round 1 is 1 month from tonight. I like the conversation about the tournament because, like talking about this with Sal earlier, you do lose something when it's so top heavy, when the top teams are just too good for the mid-major teams, and really just like more than that. You have lesser sized teams that have had big tournament moments over the years and shocking upsets. And then even, within some of the bigger conferences, teams that are just not like on the highest level. You want upsets. We kind of always want what we don't get. Upsets are great when you're watching them play out, and the game goes along, and as it continues to go along, the underdog just won't go away, has that chance of winning, then they get it, and we have today. So now it's off until Thursday night, and you look at the matchups, and okay, well, you have 2 or 3 of these mid-major teams, and while they're an interesting story, I don't think most fans are more likely to watch them play in those games than they would be, Duke or Kentucky or whoever you want for this from the top level. So if we get upsets, that's great, but then we want something else from the later rounds and vice versa. You have this right now where you're going to have really elite kind of matchups going forward, but there's a charm, if you will. I mean, for all the money that's made, I don't know if charm is really the best word, but there's a certain something that you miss with, a lot of these games were just not even close. It was the most lopsided first 2 days ever by seeds, by margin of victory. Not exactly these magical moments that we love the tournament for. Hardly any in the first 4 days. You had Maryland last night, and, that probably should have been a walk anyway. So at least there was one, but not a lot in terms of thrills from the first weekend. I did love the Florida-Connecticut game. I watched a lot of that, and Connecticut played that underdog role. They were a 9.5-point underdog. They're also the 2-time defending national champions. They're not exactly a plucky no-name, right? UConn. But they made Florida work for it. I'm attached to Florida. I have a friend, Carlin Hartman, who I went to high school with, is on the Florida bench, and so I'm rooting for him. He, by the way, took over the post-game interview when they've got the head coach there and the one-star player, and Carlin just got the team together. They went over, they hugged the coach. He got in the shot. He did a great job there. But they did make Florida worked for it. Florida was really struggling throughout the game. UConn was just like no mistakes, their kind of game, but Florida did to its credit. But again, that underdog element is missing. And it's funny, on Friday, I think it was, I was talking about, just right at the end of the show, I had a thought, whether it was about the tournament, but then I thought about the NFL and all major sports, how it seems that we're always talking about something that has changed and not for the better. But the sports just continue to thrive. More money all the time, TV rights, popularity, and you wonder, maybe, something to think about, what breaks it. And I said on Friday, like, even hockey. For all the complaining we always do, people who care about hockey, this or that with rules and television and just different things, they're seemingly in a pretty good place. Franchise values way up from what they used to be. So complaining about some of this stuff kind of feels like a waste of time. Baseball with replay and different things. Replay is everywhere, and it's usually terrible. And for me, the NCAA tournament reviews, especially the ones where they're checking the clock at the end of games, toward the end of games, that for me is the worst review in sports. It's somebody brought to me, the obvious candidate offside challenges in hockey that just are so infinitesimal differences and almost undetectable, and often also irrelevant to the play, but we got to call the goal back. An actual fun moment in a hockey game, can't have it sometimes. That's bad, you're right. But these clock ones, I did the speech on Friday. The whole game, there's a split second between the whistle and the stopping of the clock. It's just, it has to be like that. It's not automatic by the whistle. Somebody's running the clock. So there's a split second every time that we do not ever think about or care about, yet we get to the end of the game and we got to make sure that 9.1 seconds needs to be 9.4. I wish we just didn't bother with that. Sure, sometimes somebody forgets or mistakenly keeps the clock running, and that can be something where you have to change that. But these tenths of seconds changes that we stop for. There was one yesterday. I was driving in the first, I guess it was the same game, Florida, and maybe like 15-11 was the score or something like that. And the referee called goaltending, and then they reviewed it, and they're having this conversation on the radio broadcast. Okay, well, they called it a basket, so that means that it has to be, just like in every other sport, has to be obvious, has to be clear evidence that it wasn't goaltending. And the announcer's like, well, there really wasn't that, but they took it away anyway. It's all just talk. And I don't know, do we need a basket with 10 minutes to go in the first half? Do we need the game to be stopped and have that be reviewed? I know. To complain about replay is also just mostly a waste of time because it's only getting more prevalent. It's never going away. We will never, I would love to have it happen just to see what it would feel like and be like anymore, but we are probably never having, again, we're taking replay out of sports. I doubt it. But the tournament, you love the upsets, the potential for upsets, the great moments, buzzer beaters, even if they're not a clear favorite versus an underdog. Christian Laettner in Duke, Kentucky is the first great moment in the tournament that ever comes to my mind, whatever, 91 or 92, whatever year that was. And that's Duke, Kentucky. That's not St. Joseph's or George Mason or somebody like that. I mean, that's just an epic game between two legendary programs. We still have the potential for that. How much worse does it get? If it could get, if you will, worse, how much worse does it get? Like more and more transfer portal guys kind of abandoning the mid-major teams for bigger opportunities and bigger programs. Does it get worse than this, where you have the one seeds and the favorites just rolling? I don't want to assume it will always be like this because this is 1 year, but it is logical that this would happen because of the changes in the sport. And so you're going to have better peak teams and just weaker in the middle. It's just logical that it would be like this. I just don't think it's great. I think the intentions are good. I think how we got here is good, but you'd like to have it be more competitive. You want, it's just not how it is, but you want it to be any sport, whatever it is we're talking about, the rules, the format, anything, playoffs, you want it to be what's best for the fans. That's why they exist. They exist for the pleasure of the fans, for us to spend time and money on. And so what is best for the fans? And what you get usually is not exactly what's best for the fans. You just get more. You get more playoff teams in football. You get more college football, baseball. You get more playoff teams all the time. You get more teams. That's not necessarily bad. But, more playoffs, I don't think we really need that. I don't think it's better. Baseball isn't better because you have 6 teams now per league, I think it is. I'm only pretty sure. 6 per league make the playoffs. And all that does is, it also gives other teams a shot at it. But, okay, it just cheapens the season. It makes it less important that for 6 months of the regular season that you actually have to be really good. You can be pretty good and make it. And then who knows? It's best of 3. And anything can happen like that in baseball. So what's best for the competition, what's best for the structure, what's best for the fans, not always, not even often, what we usually get. This trend in the tournament is not great for us. I think bottom line, it ends up like that. At least, though, you get, for the teams that are left, you get great matchups. So, good and bad. 803-0550 for your calls. Get back to football here as we continue. Paul Hamilton at 5:30. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.
More of
Right now it is contest time. Caller 5-716-221-4WGR. That's 4947. Wins 2 tickets to see Disturbed with Daughtry and Nothing More at KeyBank Center next Friday, April 4th. There you go again, courtesy of Live Nation. That's a week from this Friday, so it's next Friday. Get your tickets while you can at Ticketmaster.com. Your calls coming up as we get them, 803-0550. Paul at 5:30. Sabres home to Ottawa tomorrow night after splitting on the weekend. Saw from, I'm not sure if it was Saturday or yesterday, the game notes the Sabres put out. They list their injuries, and, hockey forever, 20 years or more. It's been lower body, upper body. For Josh Norris, they write it as undisclosed. I mean, that's shorter for was hurt when we traded for him, I suppose, but is there maybe like an extra level of mystery around Norris? I don't know. Would it be because of his status coming over from Ottawa? Bulldog thought to ask Kevin Adams after the trade, and his cousins and the Senators here tomorrow, about Norris, and it was a good question. Like, how do you guys trade information on the medical stuff? Like, what happens in that scenario? And Adams said how the Senators' doctor and the Sabres' doctor had a conversation. Like, there is information that's shared there, but it seemed the consensus on Norris would be one, he wasn't going to be traded if not for this injury history he has, which is becoming a problem, I think. And, or just another way, would have gotten a lot more in a trade if that's what Ottawa had been inclined to do. I think you could get Norris because of the injury stuff. And the Sabres did. I think he's an exciting player, but if it's chronic, I don't know. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, though. Just interesting how they officially, on the Sabres' own release, describe it as undisclosed. You could also almost read that as Norris won't tell them what his injury is, which I doubt is it. He won't tell us, so it's undisclosed. Again, Paul coming up at 5:30. I saw today that this is the 20th anniversary of the debut of The Office. 20 years ago tonight, the premiere of The Office aired on NBC. I remember how I got into it. It was a friend's recommendation. Isn't that the most common way you get into a show? Is somebody tells you that they love it. Oh, I'm obsessed with Severance. You got to watch this. Bulldog was into Severance, and I know that was on Apple, which we didn't have until it just happened that we bought something, and now we have Apple for a month or whatever, and started watching Severance, and now super fan. I think with The Office, I think it was Brad Ryder. I think Brad was the one who told me that maybe he watched The Office UK with Ricky Gervais and loved it. I hope that's right, but I know with Lost, it was my sister Betsy who was raving about Lost. I'm like, okay, glad you like it. But then she bought me for Christmas maybe the DVDs. It's that far back. The box set, season 1, and I had a sick day where my wife had gone to work. I'm not even sure the kids were around yet. And I just popped one in, and I kind of wanted to fall asleep, but I couldn't. Ended up watching 11 of them in a row one day. So I think that's probably the number one way where you get hooked into a show is somebody. It doesn't have to be someone you know necessarily. Maybe it's someone you listen to. They mention it. Trista tells us The Day of the Jackal. She wants us to watch The Day of the Jackal. So I guess probably I will do that. I didn't watch Top Gun for her, though. First one of these she ever gave us was you got to go see the new Top Gun Maverick. And all right, I probably could find my way to that. Never did. Never did. Mike Schopp here. Bulldog is away this week. Let's get into the draft some more. What do you want? I'm always asking the same things, but want, not want. What's I've said already today, I'm having a little bit of a struggle coming to all right, answering my own question, I guess in the end is what it is. I want this player or I want this position because for all the merits of defensive line, corner, the sort of the obvious areas of concern, relative concern at least for the Bills, how much better does it make them? I think that the two positions themselves are different from each other, but I want to spend some more time on the draft here. 1 month from tonight is round one. Again, lines are open for your calls. This is WGR.
Call or text
The Buffalo Sabres are off today following a split back-to-back over the weekend. They did take down Winnipeg yesterday. They'll be back in action tomorrow when they host Ottawa. And that does mean the return of former Sabre Dylan Cousins, who was traded to the Senators on this year's deadline. In his 8 games with Ottawa, Cousins does have 3 goals and 7 points. And we'll get more on this past weekend and what's to come this week for the Sabres when Paul Hamilton joins the show at 5:30. For the NHL overall, a very light night, just 4 games, 2 at 7:30. The Devils hosting Vancouver, and the Islanders have the Blue Jackets in town. At 8, the Wild are in Dallas to take on the Stars, and then 9 o'clock sees Detroit out west to take on Utah. While over in college basketball, both tournaments are well underway for both the men's and women's game. The men's tournament is through the first 2 rounds. All 4 1 seeds still alive. Just one double-digit seed has advanced to the second weekend. John Calipari's 10-seeded Arkansas Sweet 16 is going to get underway on Thursday. While the women's bracket, they are wrapping up their round of 32 today, while the women's NIT, UB, they came back up against UMass, and they will now take on Southern Indiana on Thursday. It's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Having a very serious conversation about mayonnaise here.
And the Bulldog.
And don't even talk to me about weed.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Thinking about the 2 topics I've spent most of the day on, the changing nature of the NCAA men's basketball tournament, where players are transferring with ease and moving to bigger, if not better, schools, opportunities, leaving mid-majors, leaving kind of the mid-tier of the college basketball tournament in the dust. And whether that'll change, I mean, it's kind of the first year where it's been quite this way. And then from that, NFL draft, talking to Sal earlier, and he made the comparison, said what college sports is now is as if in football they took away the salary cap, and I suppose also took away the draft. And you could just go after anybody you want. In sports, in the year 2025, this is known as the Dodgers. Sure, there's a tax that they pay, and yeah, other teams do get players, but the Dodgers have this kind of a dominance, in terms of building their team over everyone else. And a lot of that is, their willingness, of course, different than any other sport right now will allow. I don't know. What would it be like if they just took all the limitations off? If not, get rid of the draft. They'll never get rid of the draft, I want to say, because the draft is its own big event. The NFL has made the draft. I mean, they're going to Lambeau this year, right on the field in Green Bay. They're going to stadiums now, and the draft has been a big deal for many years, but maybe bigger than ever. So, it's interesting to think about what it would be without a draft where players could, negotiate their own opportunities, their own deals with any team like free agents can do. I would miss the draft, but I've always kind of thought that this would be actually more fair if it did go that way. We're doing the best we can here with the cap, trying to keep it competitive, and for the most part, at least football-wise, not so much baseball, where lesser teams just pocket the money. Better this way than that. But that's kind of what the college thing is now, right? Where players can just, Sal mentioned Scottie Pippen's son transferring from, or choosing to enter the portal, transferring from Michigan today, and Michigan is still alive in the tournament. So I don't know. It's pretty crazy. Not great for the fans, I think. But you do have. I mean, I heard. I don't really follow it until the tournament, but I heard Duke described as the best team in the last 20 years in the sport. And what I saw yesterday against my wife's alma mater, Baylor, I guess they kind of looked like it. It might be true. 803-0550 is the number. First call I took today was from a listener who wants the Bills to trade up into the top 5. And I think I really disappointed this caller by saying there is just no way that's going to be possible if they wanted to do it. What would that be? Trading your entire draft plus to get to the top 5? It's fun to think about. I think it's fun to think about whether a team, say, picking at 5 could justify it. And I'm back. I'm trade down guy. I want to say yes. Doesn't that have to apply? I mean, are there limits to when trading down is really worth it? Do I need... Sal says that the Bills have 10 picks. Are they going to use them all? Do they need 10 players out of this draft? I mean, how many have a chance to make the team? All of that. I guess this would be 20 or so for whatever team made this hypothetical trade for somebody's entire draft for that top 5 pick. There's no way that's going to happen. I got the chart out earlier, and what was it? The Bills could trade pick 30 and pick 62 in round 2 for about the price of pick 18 in the first round. To me, this would be a very bad idea, especially when you're talking about your needs on defense, because I'll just wait. Lines are open for your calls. What do you want from the draft, which is 1 month exactly away? I said earlier how I've found it challenging so far to get to like a real certain place when it comes to this draft. Their needs are kind of obvious. I have my fun with wide receiver. It doesn't sound like the best year. The fact that their first pick each of the last 2 years were pass catchers, all the more reason to think that they would not do that a third consecutive time. Although, it's not like they've gotten a lot out of those 2 guys yet, so it still sort of rates as a need, I would say, on this team. But I would think, I mean, if you had 10 mock drafts, we look at them all the time. They're always on defense, almost always on defense for the Bills. And so they do that. They come out of the second day, 1 first-round pick, 2 seconds, no third at this point, and we'll get you a presumably starting interior defensive lineman. We'll get you a corner that has a chance to start. Even at 30, I wonder if they would have to start right away. I mean, that's a tough position to see a guy just start immediately. And these first-round picks, they've been high picks have been often brought in kind of slowly by the Bills. So I still think there's probably going to be someone else, a veteran at that position, at least if they were to draft somebody even in round 1. I think it would probably be a competition, but who knows? So we'll get you that defensive tackle, we'll get you the corner, and then one more of something, maybe even an edge rusher or linebacker, maybe an offensive lineman, possibly, or a receiver even. We'll do that. And then, okay, what will it mean to my season? I mean, you have holes, you got to fill them. This is not what we've had the last couple of years, I want to say, thinking back, is referendums in the draft. Last year with the wide receiver stuff, all the names, the big board over here behind me, all the different conversations about traits and who might be the best fit for the Bills. It was Diggs is gone, Davis is gone. How much do the Bills want to invest here? Kind of a referendum on how they want to play a little bit. That's maybe more Kincaid than it is Coleman, because as I'm thinking out loud here, the Diggs thing, Diggs and Davis kind of meant that, all right, there's a gaping hole on the roster now, more like what corner looks like, or even D-line. This year feels like they're going to draft those pieces, almost definitely, first 2 days. That's where they need help. And roll into the season and be probably about the same team, which is good, but not short-term, like huge difference makers. Just it's the draft you have to get there at corner, D-tackle, all of that. Just all I'm saying is this is not a draft as I sit here a month away thinking where it's just like this is make or break in any way. I think you do what you need to do these first 2 rounds and then see what you get. Sometimes you'll hit a home run and sometimes it's Kyer Elam. You really can't know. But that's kind of how I see this going for them, is just kind of like one of those drafts where you don't really have, it's not luxury pick time or anything like that. We've had a year or 2 where the Bills were so well set, they could just do a lot of different things in the draft. So years it's felt different than this one. I've brought up, and I'd like your opinion on this too, whatever it might be, like whether it's in terms of Kansas City or something else pertaining to the AFC. I mentioned it with Tyler Dunn earlier, how it's for the last couple of years, and for the last 5 even, back to Allen, back to Mahomes, back to Lamar Jackson, when these three guys all, like almost right away, Allen was a year, almost right away hit so well, did so well that their teams went right to the top. And they're not old or anything yet. So I just wonder how long that kind of stranglehold on the conference will be the case. And if you want to put, like Tyler did, Cincinnati into that group too because of Burrow, same kind of thing. I suppose you can do that. Might be right to. But it's just unusual for the league to go such a length of time without some kind of, reshuffling, if you will, in the conference. We've got these top teams, and, we're glad for this around here. We've got these top teams who have been so consistent and so excellent. And now you've got a half a dozen or so teams that just feel like, can you even imagine them being good? Well, try that. Because today when I brought this up, I asked it of Tyler, and I kind of was a little bit hesitant in a couple of cases because I could imagine it. Like, I can't imagine it with Jacksonville. Not great, but good, playoffs, that kind of a bounce back from Lawrence. We've talked about New England for this, and I think they're a little bit interesting. New coach, the quarterback is promising. They still have, talent needs, and they haven't done a lot about that. They haven't been able to. It was going to be T. Higgins maybe, and then he stays in Cincinnati. And a couple of other, Ayuk was one, although he's under contract with the Niners, a couple of other rumors. But the Patriots, the last I heard, it was Diggs in for a visit. And did that even happen? If it did, I missed it. So there's still a long way to go there, I think, for New England. The Jets, Bulldog's not here to make fun of me because for a few years, at least the Rodgers years, I talked myself into that the Jets would be tough. And they were not, as you know. So I don't want to sound like that again. But I kind of I'm glad that that Fields is going to get a chance. Most people, including Bulldog, if he were here to say it, he would say it, are not betting on that to work. But I want to see, Pittsburgh really didn't do it. Chicago was destined to fail. Coach didn't start him right away. Then you've got coaching changes, just constant turmoil, destined to fail. No chance. This, at least, I hope for him and, for fans, is one where they just sort of let him play. And no looking over your shoulder all the time, no constant discussion about when he's coming out. I'd like to see that for him. I don't know how many wins that is. So maybe there's a good season in there. They do have some good talent, New York. Cleveland is a really hard one for me to even imagine. How does it happen? Do they draft Shedeur Sanders at 2 and it's Kenny Pickett and none of it sounds good to me. I'm not down on Sanders. I don't know what it's going to be, but none of that sounds good to me. The fact that they kept Garrett too and just didn't commit to recouping some draft picks, just trying to live out the Watson years and get to a healthier place, if you will. It's just really hard for me to see the AFC North, to see the Browns, not being terrible, even with the second overall pick in this draft. Pittsburgh, everybody's kind of on the same page with Pittsburgh, which is probably mid, right? Aaron Rodgers, no Aaron Rodgers. They've been the same for, several years in a row. Good enough to get in. That's not that doesn't really qualify as terrible either, what the Steelers have been these last few years. They've been in the playoffs. We've had this argument during the reverse AFC power rankings. I really would never want to be them, but, they're not the worst. So you have those teams. You have Tennessee picking at 101. Today was Miami's pro day, University of Miami, Cam Ward, and several other guys. And I guess Tennessee, I read, was all over it, even having their PR film crew people there to shoot Cam Ward, certainly starting to look like he will be their first overall pick, not just the 101 after a trade, that the Titans might want him. Do you think Levis has any trade value if they were to do that? Could a team want to try on Will Levis? Still young. Not great, but some talent. Maybe a team would want to do that if Tennessee didn't want him around as like sort of, it's kind of a weird backup, you know? The young quarterback you're moving on from, you bring in the first overall pick in the draft. You might rather have someone more experienced in that role, if it can be possible. And who did I leave out? The Raiders. The Raiders are going to be interesting. Maybe not good, but look at the changes they've made with Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, Geno Smith making that trade. I mean, if you're thinking long-term as a rebuilding project, you're not doing any of those things. You're not hiring the league's oldest coach. You know, you're not getting Chip Kelly at that point unless you're making him the head coach, I suppose. And you're definitely not trading for Geno Smith, which is what they did. So I wonder what the ceiling is for Vegas. I want to think that it's like possible that all works. Smith has been very good, most accurate quarterback in the league the last couple of years. And with high draft picks to go with Bowers, running back Genty makes sense. A good wide receiver in round 2, something like that, makes Vegas interesting. So all these teams, whatever it is that like is kind of the best case for them, there's still the matter of, okay, well, there's a lot of improvement possible here for some of these teams. I mean, they're coming from the bottom, but how good could they be? Could they really challenge for an AFC title? Could they really, I mean, in 1 year, probably not. But it does seem like the conference is pretty stretched out. And I just know eventually that's going to, push back a little bit. Whether it happens this year or not, we'll see. 803-0550 for your calls. Talking to Sal earlier, one question I had for him was about Christian Benford and James Cook. And just when would you start to worry about the contract stuff? Now, the number one thing with this is that they both have a contract for this year. So if they want to hold out and not get paid and get fined and all of that, then that could be what happens. But it's not like they don't have a deal already. So you've got that to think about too. Benford seems like he's positioned to do great, just maybe a matter of time for that. I just wonder if, and it's really just a question, but if these two players not having new contracts, like long-term, whatever that might be, 3-4 years or more maybe for Benford, done already, might make you wonder just what kind of, how close the two sides might be if they're talking. Bean didn't exactly shut down the question about Benford, I think it was, or even Cook. The last time he spoke a couple of weeks ago, he didn't exactly shut it down, but he did say kind of curtly, I'm not negotiating these in public, right? So maybe it's a judgment call, maybe a different vibe a little bit than, it's close, it'll get done, anything like that. He talked about Benford in an interesting way that one time, like how excited he is about him, long-term and all this kind of thing, but it didn't exactly sound like a new contract for him was imminent. Again, just kind of a guess. And then there's our old friend, the topic of James Cook and his salary. And I kind of want this, just out of curiosity, to go past the draft. Because I want to see if the Bills would bring someone in the draft. And they probably should. They usually do anyway. Whatever their running back room looks like. They've drafted one, including Cook in his turn a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago now, end of the second round. They've done this every year, and either they think this is a year where they don't have to because of the season Cook had, and they get a contract with him done, whatever, like he's a core piece, or they do it anyway. And that's probably Saturday, round 4, round 5. It's just every draft analyst is super hyped for these backs, including my guest on Friday, Scott Barrett, who, he couldn't really say enough about the number of really talented running back options there are in the draft. And he's to the Bills, he said something like, of course they should draft one of them. So I'm curious for that. I'm thinking about fantasy football too, but everywhere in the NFL, even teams that have established stars at the position, like Philadelphia for starters, and they just paid Barkley another new contract, record stuff. Maybe the last team in the league that you'd think would want a running back from this draft. But with all the injuries at the position and all the talent this year, I kind of don't think I could name a team that I would say shouldn't do it. Never too high. Not talking round one. I mean, Genty is a special prospect apparently, and he'll go even as high as 6, I guess, in this draft, or even higher. Some people like him for New England at 4. So he's going to be an exception here, but man, 10, 20 running backs, rounds 3 through the end. I think it's always like a pretty cheap, smart investment for a team to do with all the injuries and this year, all the talent. So if Cook, either way, I mean, this doesn't have to mean anything, but if he's still unsigned by the draft, all the more reason maybe to speculate on what the Bills might do at that position. I think I'll want to see them draft somebody on day 3. And as I just said, I think I want to see every team draft one of them on day 3. It might be just that deep. Just we can't trade the whole draft for a top 5 pick, unfortunately, to the caller's idea from earlier. Not going to be possible. We'll take a break here, have the update, and then bring Paul on. The Sabres are home to Dylan Cousins and Ottawa tomorrow night. A split for the Sabres over the weekend, losing in Minnesota and then winning yesterday in Winnipeg. That's a nice win as they continue their heroic effort to try to eclipse 79.5 points. Just a random hypothetical number. By the way, the Bisons open on Friday. Still March, yes, but their season opener is at home Friday at 2 o'clock. Major League Baseball, it's Thursday. We've already had the 2 games in Tokyo, but for most, maybe everybody else, it's Thursday. The Yankees have Milwaukee at home to start their season. I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off this week. Paul will join me after sports here on WGR.
Never
Back over the weekend, and now next up we'll be hosting Ottawa tomorrow afternoon, and with that it will be the return of former forward Dylan Cousins, who was traded to the Senators at this year's deadline. In the 8 games with Ottawa, Cousins does have 3 goals and 7 points, and we'll get more on the Sabres tomorrow night and what is to come when Paul Hamilton joins the show next. Around the NHL, it is a very light night, just 4 games, 2 at 7:30. The Devils hosting Vancouver, and the Islanders having the Blue Jackets in town. At 8, the Wild are in Dallas to take on the Stars, and then at 9 o'clock, Detroit is out west as they take on Utah. In college basketball, both the men's and women's tournaments are well underway. The men, they are through the first 2 rounds, all 4 1 seeds still alive, and just 1 double-digit seed has advanced to the second weekend. John Calipari's 10-seeded Arkansas. The Sweet 16 is going to get underway on Thursday. And then over to the women's bracket, they're finishing up the round of 32 today. And one note from the women's NIT, UB came back against UMass, and now they move on. They will take on Southern Indiana on Thursday. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Could wait until tomorrow night's pregame show, but, you know, people, it's that good. Paul, tribute video time tomorrow night, potentially. A real one. Dylan Cousins, right?
Oh, absolutely there'll be one. Probably one for Dennis Gilbert, too.
Yes, okay, sure. All right, quick turnaround. The trade was pretty recent, but here comes Ottawa. You and I spoke a lot before the deadline, like what can the Sabres do? Another miss this year, no playoffs probably. And what you wanted was to see them shake up the core, right? Like just do something where one of these young players has been given a big contract, some kind of different combination is needed here. Kevin Adams was talking pretty much the same way as we got close to the deadline, and that's what he ended up doing with this with the Cousins move. I mean, it's been a while now, and I know he's had a pretty good start for Ottawa, but as you think about the trade and just like the Cousins part of it, I doubt it surprised you, and maybe you even liked it.
No, I did like the trade, and it doesn't surprise me that Cousins is doing well so far in Ottawa. I mean, he's energized. It's, you know, there's been a cloud over this arena for 14 years of absolute horrible losing, and you know, it gets to guys. I mean, I know fans don't sometimes think of, you know, athletes being human, but they are human, and it gets to you when you come in the door and you're out of it by January 1st. And I know they have nobody to blame but themselves, but the fact remains is they're still walking in the building every day after January 1st knowing they are not going to be in the playoffs. And you just keep losing and losing and losing and losing. And it just brings you so far down, and then all of a sudden you get traded. And you know, I did see him for a few minutes in the hotel lobby after he got traded, and he had tears in his eyes. He couldn't talk at the time really on record. And I totally understood. He was very emotional about it. He wanted to be part of the solution here, not part of the problem that gets traded. And but then he shows up in Ottawa, and there they are in a playoff race. And now everything's going well, and everybody's up. And now he's up, and ready to go. I mean, this is exciting. When was the last time exciting was used as the word being a Buffalo Sabre? Maybe opening night. And, after that, it's downhill after that. So, I see, why he's doing well right now, and we'll see how it goes, throughout his career in Ottawa.
I think probably most trades players feel very, much mixed emotions. I mean, there are times when a player really wants to move, and maybe that's not mixed emotions. But I think Cousins, what you said, of course, I'd believe it, wanted to be part of the solution, was also excited to go, at the same time.
He wasn't when it happened.
He wasn't at first. Okay.
No, not at first. But, once, I think he left the hotel and got on the plane. He may not even have been excited then, but, you're walking into the unknown. So now you're nervous. You don't know what to expect. You again are upset that you're leaving people who are your very, very good friends. He was very close to the team players on this team. Again, he liked playing here. He liked being a Sabre, and he wanted to be part of the solution and was pretty upset that he didn't play well enough to be part of a solution. But once he got there and was greeted by the team and welcomed in and played his first game, realizing, hey, this might be a playoff team. They were either in the playoffs by 2 points or out of the playoffs by 2 points, I think, when he got there. And, so it's important games right away. And they won that game. And, so then now the excitement is generated because you've been welcomed. Now I think then you start getting excited. It's like, wow, okay, cool. They want me here. Hey, really cool. This might be a playoff team. Let's go. Type of a thing. And then you do well in your first game, and the fans are screaming and yelling for you and everything, and now you're excited.
That'd be a good feeling. Big change. Ottawa, by the way, is 5 points up right now with 13 games to go. And again, the Senators are here with Cousins tomorrow night. One of the players the Sabres got in that trade, Jacob Bernard Docker, 2 assists yesterday. What kind of potential does he have to stick around?
Well, it's a former number 1 pick who just never really got the opportunity in Ottawa and got hurt this year. He had a high ankle sprain. He was out since the 28th of December, was cleared on March 1st, but Ottawa never put him back in the lineup. He never got back in. And so he was very excited to leave because he just felt he wasn't going to get an opportunity there. He's played 2 games here for the Sabres, and the way I put it to Brian is I didn't really notice him, which for a defenseman means he probably played pretty well. That means you didn't go, oh, what are you doing there, or anything like that. It seemed like he did what he was supposed to do. Those are especially the assist to Dahlin. He put it right in the wheelhouse, so Dahlin could rip it, and so he got a couple of assists in the game. He's played 2 games, and I think he's been okay for himself in those 2 games, but he's a shot blocker. That I do know about him. I remember that actually from watching the little that I've seen him play, and a guy that he did contribute a little bit offensively in that game, but wants to be solid defensively, and I think was in the 2 games he played.
And we've talked about how with the signings like Zucker, Greenway, then Bryson, each move affords the Sabres going forward a little bit less roster flexibility naturally. But you do have this player, and you do have Kozak, who had a moment yesterday, Tyson Kozak in Winnipeg, and you like his game.
I like it a lot. He's just the guy you want with Beck Mallenstein as your number 4 center. A guy with energy, a guy that plays the game right, a guy that will dive in front of pucks to block a shot, a guy that after he wins the faceoff doesn't stand there and admire his work. He goes to the net and scores a goal off a rebound, and he plays the game the right way. He's not going to be a 20-goal scorer. I don't even know if he'll be a 10-goal scorer, but he's the type of guy that, because I remember him when the Amherst went to the Eastern Conference Final. I saw a lot of those games and covered a lot of those games. He's always on the ice at the end of the game, always. He'll go face first into a shot if he has to. He will do anything to win a hockey game, and that was the first thing I noticed about him, watching him game in and game out, and watching Seth Appert always calling on him in those important situations to be out there. And I felt right then and there that here's a guy that's going to be in the NHL. He's not going to be a star or anything, but he's going to be that guy that you want on your team who will do it right and won't get himself caught all that often, and will be in the middle of things. He'll be in the battles. He'll be in front of the net. He'll win you some faceoffs. He'll block some shots. He'll kill you a penalty. The little things that you need done by those certain guys.
1 goal yesterday for Kozak. The Sabres win in Winnipeg 5-3. I mean, pretty good. A regulation win in Winnipeg. They're lucky not to see Hellebuck probably, but the story became their own goalie.
It did. I mean, yeah, Comrie played like he did in Buffalo. I mean, it certainly was not one of his better games, and Reimer stood on his head. But there were a lot of other things to like from a Sabres standpoint in that game, I thought. Especially coming in, everything was against them. Winnipeg hadn't played since Thursday. Buffalo played in Minnesota the day before. They had played, it was their 3-4. Winnipeg had not lost in regulation at home since January. They were 7-0-1. They'd lost 5 games all year, regulation losses at home. They were 25-5-4 coming in. So everything was really built up against you. You're playing a team that came in with a .714 points percentage, which is second best in the NHL, with the best power play in the league, the best defense in the league, the third best goal scoring in the league, and you had just played the day before, and you were in 3-4 in 3 different cities. And that's what you've heard the last 2 coaches talk about this, Lindy Ruff and Don Granato, that if you're going to be a good team, you have to learn how to win with your B game. And that's exactly what they did. And that doesn't mean just because you're tired and you're on the road and playing a good team doesn't mean, as I mentioned with Kozak, he wins the draw, 2 guys go to the net. You can still go to the net. You can still dive to get a puck out while you're killing a penalty like Connor Clifton did. And show desperation to get the puck up to McLeod, who then relayed it up to Tuck for a breakaway and a short-handed goal on a penalty that shouldn't even have been called. It actually should have been a Buffalo power play, not a penalty kill, so it was kind of justice for them that they scored. You can still do those types of things, score timely goals, even though maybe you don't have your energy like you want to, or you don't have your A game. That's what coaches are talking about when they do that. And so I think there was a lot for them to be proud of in that win. But when you look at the overall, Mike, look at the last 5 games. They easily could have a 5-game winning streak, and that's what they have to build. Instead of being 3-2, they should be 5-0 right now in those 5 games. I mean, look at the Utah game. You're down by a goal. There's a delayed penalty. You all you got to do is give them the puck, and you got a 6-on-4 to tie the game and maybe win the game. But we saw what happened. They didn't do that. They accidentally put the puck in their own net, and that's not the point. That happens. That was bad luck. But that game was right there for you, right there. But you make that mental error that you don't get it. Minnesota, you played 50 minutes of good hockey. 10 minutes killed you. The first period they played great. They had 3 or 4 grade A scoring opportunities. They had the goaltender down and out. McLeod missed the net. All he had to do is put the puck on the net and he scores. I mean, they easily could have been up 3-0 at the end of the first period, but instead it was 0-0. Then all of a sudden they have 10 of the worst minutes they've had in some time, and they're behind 3-0, and that team hasn't lost all year when they got the lead in the third period. You're not beating them once you get by, and they played 10 bad minutes. So to me, you take those 2 games. When you become a playoff team and you're going to become a good team, we have to be talking right now about a 5-game winning streak, not 3-2, and that's what they have to work towards.
By the way, speaking of Winnipeg, the Sabres there yesterday. The Capitals are there tomorrow night, and Ovechkin now within 6 of Gretzky. I assume he will get Hellebuck in that game tomorrow.
Yes.
6 away, 7 to win, 6 to tie for Ovechkin in 12 remaining games, including 1 against the Sabres. That's this Sunday, I think.
Yeah, if he gets a hat trick, maybe we'll have a shot on Sunday to seeing it. If he can find a hat trick this week.
Yeah, or he gets one on Sunday.
Yeah.
If that's what it takes. We'll see. Paul, speaking of things that kill teams, how about Iowa State killing my bracket? Sorry, but man, it didn't go well for me this weekend.
Iowa State had a very, very, very good team, but they were the type of team when one guy was hurt, they were finished. That's when they started playing poorly. They had one guy who's a shooter that got hurt, and the season started to go down the drain. And then the guy who was the MVP of the Big 12 tournament last year and the MVP of the Maui tournament this year, Gilbert, he got hurt, played hurt, but he didn't play in the NCAA tournament. And that was the thing. When they had their full team, they were one of the best teams in the nation, and people were talking about them maybe winning it all and being in the Final Four, but they were missing that one guy, and they couldn't play defense the way they should, and that let the Mississippi State to go out and shoot the heck out of the basketball, because Iowa State, the guy that wasn't there is their best defensive guy, best pressure guy. He's also a good shooter. They have two good shooters. It took the kid from UB a while to get going. He did wind up with over 20 points, but they have another shooter just like him. He didn't hit a basket till almost 4 minutes left in the game. So when you got the other team shooting over 50% and 100% at the free throw line, and you're missing, and you're not playing D, you saw what happened.
I guess I could have done well to know all of this, but it didn't. It didn't happen. I don't mean brackets. It's more just that Survivor thing.
I tried to kid myself into thinking, well, you know what? Maybe they can do it without him, especially in the first game, but they were playing Lipscomb. I mean, they can win without them against Lipscomb, but I tried to kid myself into thinking, hey, you know what? All right, they can win without him. Those two get shooting and they get hot, but that's just too much to ask. I mean, they've proven time and time again this year that they have a really, really good team when they have a full team, but if one of those guys is out, they have problems.
Paul, thanks. Talk to you tomorrow during pregame.
Okay, take care.
Paul Hamilton's appearances on WGR are brought to you by Equitable Advisors. Planning for your future is about more than just money. Let Equitable be your guide, and by Raylax Honda. Raylax, we got this. Should I have said, like a pro would have, that Paul went to Iowa State? If you're wondering why he's going long on the Iowa State depth chart, I probably should have let you know that if you didn't. Quick break here, then we'll talk some more. I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off this week. You're listening to WGR.
More
Welcome back. I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is away for the week. Thanks for joining me. My chat with Sal coming up at the top of the hour about Christian Benford, James Cook, some draft stuff, I believe, if I remember right, and more. Started today talking about wide receivers in the draft because, of course, and having read Bob McGinn at Tyler Dunn's fine website, golongtd.com, where he ranks players by position and has a lot of quotes from unnamed scouts, which can be really harsh, some of them. But he did generally have a negative attitude about this draft class at receiver and had a note that the last time only one wide receiver went in the first round was 2006. Santonio Holmes. That's the last time a first round came with only one receiver picked. And I've seen mock drafts where that is what we get this year. Hunter makes that. I mean, if Travis Hunter counts as a wide receiver, this will not happen because McMillan is a first round pick out of Arizona, and so is, of course, Travis Hunter. But if you count him as a corner, and I don't know what you're supposed to count him as. Who decides? I'll have to find this out. If you count him as a cornerback, though, there's some chance, I think, that only one is possible, which that's interesting to think about if you want to give there some, well, hope, some chance that the Bills would consider it at 30 if it happens to be, well, wide receiver 3 in the draft, including Hunter, then maybe they would be tempted. I think what you have after McMillan is just different, like last year came to be by when the Bills picked as well, different types. So you can put them in any order based on who the team is and what they're looking for. My chat with Sal, as I mentioned, coming up after the update. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.
Call or text WGR